Welcome to another edition of On Point podcast. It's been a while, but I've been invigorated recently. I've met some really interesting people, and all the changes that are happening in the world, especially in construction, facilities management, it's time to do another On Point. Today I'm joined by a really interesting guest, Jason Melhuish, who works for one of the biggest global players in property and asset management, CBRE. And his experience, he has a wealth of experience and a real interest in things outside, like cars and Porsches that we both enjoy. So I think it should be a really good conversation. Jason, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much for inviting me today.
So we spoke earlier, and you said you went somewhere really interesting, like Clerkenwell Design.
Yeah, well, the last 3 days have been Clerkenwell Design Week, which is Clerkenwell of London, just north of Farringdon, of where the whole design industry basically stops for 3 days. Every studio, design centre and pub is open for the 3 days, where everybody can go and have a look. All the different designers, different influencers, different property managers, asset managers can go and have a look and see what designs, what products are being put together by the different organisations there, from a furniture, from a flooring, ceilings, walls. So yeah, I've been over there having a look around, seeing what the new trends are, what the expectation is, and also from one angle you've got from a tenant's perspective, but also what has been brought in to link with the facilities management industry as well, where you've got companies talking about putting networking within carpets. You've got different acoustics coming within walls, so you can have thinner walls between spaces, so thus bigger meeting rooms or etc. As people start to move back into the workplace.
It's interesting that I do a lot of that as well, trying to get out, like it's not a direct link, but it's adjacent, and it sparks off ideas. I mean, I'm surprised actually that more, I didn't go there, but I'm surprised that more people from our profession don't go and see what's going on, because obviously design informs a lot of what we're doing, especially, the buildings, both internally, externally. I recently went to the digital transformation show down in the Excel, and the way that the whole industry is evolving. Everyone's talking about AI, but sort of bringing it back, what we can do. I just think that's going to be a real mover and shaker for the next 5 years. Is that how you see it? Because obviously you're seeing it on a.
The main things people want ultimately is, one of the things much we're going digital. People want data to be able to make informed decisions, but also they want innovation. So where's the innovation going to come from? How are people going to, what's the new great thing? People will either want to save money or reduce risk. Those are the two fundamentals any occupier wants, or any property manager, or any investor wants within their property. But where's it going to come from? And is it going to come from direct? You've got the data side, you've got the tenant side. What are they going to do? You've also got to bring in hybrid working into this, where people have been sort of pushed away a few years ago from working from their offices. Now people want to be brought back into their offices, but they've got to compete with people's bedrooms ultimately to find out, people have got their setup, they've got their 3 screens, they've got the dog on the lap, they've got the coffee machine, got the fridge over in the corner, everything's set up. So people are happy there. They're working, they're being productive, they're making money for the business. But the innovation has got to be to get these people out, to get them back into working, is my personal opinion.
Do you think we're that's being sort of taken on board by commercial property? I know in retail, so a few years ago, Apple was saying that really their stores are going to be destination stores. So you'll go there, you wouldn't be able to buy anything, but you will test it out, you'll try it and maybe see how it integrates with your life. Do you think that's happening in commercial spaces? Are sort of enlightened investors and property owners and estate managers actually, taking on board that people do want to, they're coming to work or choosing to come to work for a different reason. As you said, they're comfortable at home, they've got the family around. But, I'm seeing and hearing people talk about they're coming to work because they want some kind of engagement, they want the social interaction. There's a lot of Zoomophobia and that goes on. Is that what you're seeing?
Yeah, again, seeing people are definitely coming back to work. Especially, I'm based in central London, and I'm seeing definitely people probably about 3 to 4 days a week now coming back into the office. for the organisation I work for, but also for our customers as well. You know, that people are starting to come back exactly for that collaboration, for talking to people. You said about retail as well. I mean, retail's a different market as well, because we've been very much been brought, you know, living with Amazon, living with stuff being delivered. Yeah. But I'm seeing at the moment, again, a bit of a resurgence within Oxford Street. We've lost Debenhams and House of Fraser, which are being redesigned, but they can still have retail on the ground floor to keep Oxford Street as a destination. And every day that's busy. I mean, now people are out, you know, people are shopping. You're seeing people with shopping bags. They're not just looking, people are spending money and buying things. So I think the retailer is definitely getting a resurgence, and there's a lot more people coming back out to purchase the things in the day-to-day life. And change out their sweatpants and sweatshirts and start to put different clothes and to go back to work and start over again.
How do you think, you know, you touched on innovation, which I think is, how is that sort of shaping, is there a demand for sort of the client or your average tenant, maybe through a CBRE lens, how are they catering for that sort of demand of an enlightened tenant? You know, there's talks of all sorts of AI, there's talks of, you know, as you said, there's hybrid working, but is there more enabling technology that's required, but from the building? You know, so I mean, I know in a lot of buildings, the energy is such a big thing now. So you go in and there's dashboards and there's visuals everywhere. Is that just sort of like a greenwash, or do you think there's?
No, I think that's going to be the way forward. I mean, ultimately, as I said, I work in central London, a building called Henrietta House, which is sort of the CBRE's head office, and won sort of many awards, and it's BREEAM, it's well certificated. And in that building, it's got sensors everywhere. It's got, you know, for temperature, for air quality, for capacity, where people are sitting. It all links in with an app. So you can actually find out, if as long as everybody's linked in on the app, you can find out where somebody's sitting in the building, because it works on a hot desk approach. Right. You haven't got fixed desks. There's, you know, it's a building where you have people constantly go, sort of sits just over 2,000 people, but ultimately people are coming, going all the time, working in different areas of the building. So it helps with, like, from a capacity planning, but also from the hybrid working perspective, you can have multiple teams coming in on different days. So potentially it can fit 4,500 people, but on the split days as people come and go. So again, from a data perspective, it's picking up all this data. The building is learning, all the, you know, the facilities managers of the building are learning all the time to be able to restack, to put new people into teams, find out who's integrating with who, bring it all in together to make it a lot more of a smarter building, which is, again, smart buildings is the way things are going, especially with the Internet of Things coming in, where every door's got a sensor, every lock's got a sensor to find out where people are. Plus, I mean, I think which is great, where you can, before you've even gone to the office and you want to find where you usually sit, you can actually see on the app where people are sitting. It's a bit like when you go to a car park, like you go to Westfield Shopping Centre in Stratford. You've got all the car parks have got it's got a green light or a red light if a car's in it, so you can see from a distance before you've got there is actually a space. And that sort of technology has been brought into the workplace.
Do you see, I mean, how does that work for, I mean, the area that we, you know, our sweet spot, I suppose, is buildings in around sort of between 10 and 20 years old already, that are almost coming into that sort of end of life, even though I think, you know, their life could be extended, you know, because some of them are iconic buildings. Yeah. I mean, how do you see that? You know, do you see any changes or implementations into sort of retrofit and things like that?
Yeah, I think retrofit will be the way to go. I mean, we've talked about this before, where you've got all these iconic buildings built 20, 25 years ago. I still think they're new, young buildings. Yeah. They're not. There's a lot more has gone on since then. You know, the Gherkin has been superseded by the Shard, which has been superseded by sort of 22 Bishopsgate now in height. I can see all these buildings are the existing ones built from the 80s, 90s, sort of 2000s, which are coming to the end of the life. They've been pushed probably a little bit further in some cases, end of life. You've got something which is coming, which again, 5-6 years ago wasn't being talked about a lot, but is now in every conversation. It's all part of ESG, embodied carbon, where these buildings which are there will probably stay there, but they'll be reclad. They'll be stripped out to a bit like a shell and core. And then start again. I mean, there's two I can think of off the top of my head. One, you've got Debenhams, the old Debenhams on Oxford Street, where they've kept a lot of the metal structure to reuse in the next with the new construction. Again, from an embodied carbon perspective. The old BT head office over by St Paul's, that's now been stripped out to literally basically the concrete frame, which is going to get reused in the new construction. It's going to be reclad externally, as well as new floors and new everything being put inside it. It's make it a modern building, but the embodied carbon is still within that concrete, and it hasn't been crushed and put into landfill.
That's something. I mean, you reel off the buildings, and it's always fascinating. Speaking to you, is your memory in and around London. I mean, how did you get into this industry? And
well, I've always been fascinated. I originate from a very small village in Somerset, but I was always fascinated about London. As soon as I was old enough, I think about 21, 22, I moved up to London. And I've been here ever since. I've always been involved in property. I started as an estate agent down in South London, down in Clapham. Then I went off and did a degree to be a chartered surveyor at South Bank. When I graduated, we were in a recession, unfortunately, so I ended up setting up a business with a friend, and we sort of did that for 5 years, completely different from property, but then sort of got back into the property industry via being involved with lifts. Lifts for 20 odd years. So I've been involved with many interesting buildings in London, in the UK, and in some in Europe as well in my career. So I've been sort of running around London many years, just learning stuff, been involved in business, in buildings. Been on the roof of many of the buildings I've been on the roof of, and sort of had these fantastic views from the top of Euston Tower to Telecom Tower to Centre Point, all the sort of iconic towers of the West End, and also Hilton on Park Lane, another tower which is still there. All coming to an age of we've just been discussing, of where they're sort of coming to that age of sort of 25, 30, maybe in some cases 40 years. They've been happening. That retrofit needs to be looked at to keep the carbon within the building.
yeah, I mean, the Centre Point, I love that building because it's got that old Pilkington's planar front, which we were privileged enough to work on. So we did the whole refurbishment of that. Literally took apart all the fixings, electro sort of cleaned them, and then we redid the silicone, got it all back in. Yeah, and I was really, every time I go past that, I think that was a really nice job. So, the why we called it Point was or On Point is because Point is a sort of an acronym. So, where's the potential? What's the opportunity? The impact? The needs? And any transformation. So maybe if we just talk about that for our industry. Where do you think that the biggest potential for change and improvement is?
There's two ways to look at this. There's one from an asset perspective, and then one from a workplace perspective. Asset perspective to bring it into modern day data analysis, collecting data, using that data to make informed decisions from an ESG perspective. So energy usage. I mean, you've got the EPC C by 2027, EPC B by 2030. And this is something that otherwise, if the landlords don't abide by those rules, they will have stranded assets. So again, it's collecting the data to find out what the portfolios look like. Are they in a condition to, do the windows need looking at? Do the insulation, does the roof need looking at? Does the energy being used in the building moving from gas to electric? So all that needs to be looked at. That's one side. The other side is workplace. People don't work now in pods like they used to. Sitting they like to have that ability to move around. I call it the Starbucks principle, where people like to, there's this big Starbucks thing, probably stems from the Friends videos we used to watch, or films, where you'd go into a cafe and people would like to tuck away, sit on a sofa with a laptop balancing for half an hour, then they might go and sit on a table somewhere to do a video call. And they like that movement within the office, not just being stuck in one place. Plus you've got well-being to look at, where businesses are saying, well, no, we don't want you to sit there now for 8 hours sitting in front of a screen. We want you to, every 15, 20 minutes, to get up, have a walk around, go to meet a colleague to have a conversation with, leave the building, come back again. So again, the workplace organisations need to look at. So that's the other angle.
I mean, even in our small office, with open plan, it just allows you to go up, just moving around and just going over other people's desks and stuff like that, rather than sort of what we used to have was, everyone was in a little cubicle and things like that, because we're thinking, it's affected by noise and things like that. That said, what about the opportunities? What are the sort of growth opportunities do you think for, some of your supply chain, for instance? Like, I mean, obviously we're part of that, and we're very fenestration centric. Where are some of the opportunities that you think over the next 5-10 years, to try and working with those energy climates, with the compliance that's coming down the line?
Well, I think from an EPC perspective, I mean, carbon within the operational embodied carbon in organisations is key at this moment in time. So that having that ESG strategy, every company, nearly every company, I'd say, has now got a ESG strategy of when they want to be carbon neutral. Some being 2030, some as far as 2040, but ultimately, they've got something they're pushing towards. Then the opportunity again. We talked about the buildings which need work done, so with the fenestrations and sort of facades need to be looked at from an EPC perspective. Again, tenants are making informed decisions now. Are they looking at space that they can move into and it meets their ESG standards, which didn't happen before. So there's all these opportunities for landlords to make those changes. Plus, again, the occupiers moving into the space, how are they going to operate, how are they going to run from an air conditioning perspective, an MEP perspective, how are they going to generate and work that. So there's some great opportunities there.
I mean, is that, do you think that's going to be impacting some companies that can't move with the pace, that are, it's almost like moving from bricks and mortar to, like a completely online or e-commerce, or, is there an impact to, trades, for instance, as a result of that? Or do you think it will generate more work, or?
It will generate more work. Again, every building has got to be looked at as an individual. From a trades perspective, yes. Again, we need trades. I mean, this is a massive shortage. There is a big shortage of trades out there. So this is again, the UK. I think is I've read in the news recently. We've got to start to learn to do things for ourselves, and start to employ, train people bring them through the system, to bring plumbers, carpenters, etc., and bring them up to be able to do the work that we need doing in this country. But there was opportunities everywhere. It's again, but going back to the smaller organisations. I mean, ultimately, it's going to be difficult because in some of the organisations, especially after going for the last few years with COVID, if they're not in a financial footing to be able to do some of this work, what's going to happen? Again, the land with the space they're in with their landlords. Can the landlords afford to upgrade the space to hit the current regulations? Small organisations will potentially move online, move on, because the internet now is something that all industries now look at as being a good shop window for whatever they do. Every organisation, from the smallest business in the back bedroom of somewhere, someone runs to the global corporate, has a website. So people are happy to purchase services and products through websites now.
So we talked about the. You mentioned the trades and things like that. I mean, what I've seen is technology. There's a lot of people sort of talk about the metaverse, but the one thing that I have seen that it could be used for is training, actually. Sort of knowledge transfer from, and we've got quite a experienced workforce, and we're starting to think about how do we employ technology to sort of bring new people on and have their experience transferred through some kind of, whether it's video or whether it's some kind of sort of gamification, I think, of that. And we've done a few tests, and it seems to work really well. But do you think there's a greater need within the, in the space that we operate?
Again, I think with one thing, space is expensive for any bill. You've got the cost of your staff, and you've got the cost of your space. The two main things. Back in the day, many years ago, you'd have a room for the filing cabinets with all your O&M manuals. Nowadays, it's you're looking to put everything online. Everything's scanned, it's put online. Used to be on servers in your office. Now it's generally put onto the cloud. So and then you've got this knowledge from a knowledge transfer perspective. It's bringing sort of the new generation through, bringing apprentices, the apprentice levy has sort of helped out a lot, where people are now being, organisations are being on apprentices. To start to learn what has been going on within industry. So as people come to retire, there's a new generation coming through to keep the economy going and to keep businesses running. What we were saying earlier about the older legacy buildings going to need to be upgraded, but somebody still needs to know what was there originally, and if the paper isn't there or the scan isn't there, that information is going to lose. But again, there's a whole market out there of holding all this data. I mean, you've got this AI technology we were talking about earlier about BIM, Building Information Management Systems, which is again a lot of work out there. A lot of these new projects, they have a BIM expectation. You've got digital twins where buildings are being built digitally prior to before anything a hole has been dug in the ground, or anything has even been purchased to build the project. It exists, but it exists online. So there's sort of a bit of a gamification to that. I've heard of software now where you can build in a digital twin, and it will price everything for you. All the conduits, and it's all done. It's all done with the latest prices from all the suppliers. So from a QS perspective, the information's there. So all this data, it's got to be. Not only have you got sort of the new generation learning all this, using this new technology, which they've been brought up with. They've been brought up with the internet. They've been brought up with mobile phones. Plus, you've got the existing generation who are that data, but use more of the old school approach where you've got the paper. So we are still in a transition. We've probably got another couple of generations to go before everything becomes online.
Yeah. That's something I'm passionate about, and something that we've always worked on, is that sort of digital transformation of an O&Ms. It's because it really is the quality of information equals the quality of work. And I've said it before on podcasts, so I'm boring anyone who's listening, but being able to work with records and have them interoperable. So the accountability and the integrity that goes with, if you're going to do a change, then at least record it in some kind of digital twin. And that's, we've been fortunate enough, actually, we've just won a really nice piece of work on an iconic building. And where we're doing drone surveys, we're doing internal scans, walkthroughs, point clouds, and on top of that, we're doing a verification process, which is having people physically check and inspect and do some sort of investigative piece on that. And I think what will happen is we'll be able to provide number one, we'll provide something to the client that they can plan for the next 25 years as a benchmark. Because there are no places where what's being benchmarked at the moment. So you go, if we go in and, usually people say something's broken on the 20th floor, and if they haven't got any O&Ms, you really are relying on experience, competence, and a lot of guesswork and a lot of trial and error, which you don't want to do, at night with the road closed and everything else. So I've been trying to push for that, and I'm getting more so we've been talking about it for 5 years, but in the last year, so something's happening, and I think it's golden thread. I think it's the Building Safety Act. That clients are now actually going, okay, well, we need to take notice. So it's going to drive efficiency, it's safety, I'm going to be covered by compliance, it'll help me plan for the expenditure which will come. We're trying to match net zero, or trying to get the improvement in EPC, whether it's 27, whether it's 30, or whether it's 40. But if you've got a big building that's housing 2, 3, 5, 10,000 people, you have, there's some ownership, there's some duty of care to keep your building number one, and also, so that people that are using it are really enjoying it. So if you're, the mayor, what would be the transformation? What would your suggestions be, or what would you demand almost? What would you be forceful on?
That's an interesting question. I can think from being a mayor for a year. From a property perspective, I would get the high street. I'd try to get more of a high street feel to the different areas, because you travel around London and there is a lot of areas where you've got a lot of empty shops. reinvigorate the areas, get small businesses involved, get your butchers, your bakers, back on the high street. I know we all now rely on supermarkets with that one-stop shop, but start to get that integration within the different areas within London and probably all over the country as well. I mean, you start to travel to different villages and small towns around the country, which I do for work, and you find the whole heart of these areas have just been disappeared because the small shops aren't there, which isn't bringing people out of their homes to come out and integrate with each other. And
so how does places like Coal Drop Yard, for instance, fit into that? Or
Coal Drop Yard over at King's Cross. No, King's Cross I think is fantastic. Back in my day, King's Cross wasn't a destination; it was a place you avoided like the plague. There was nothing there. But then since you've had St Pancras built, the hotel has been sort of redeveloped. So I remember that many years that was just derelict. Francis Crick building next door built, as well as all the offices, and the whole area has just been completely regenerated. But I think it's fantastic. I mean, ultimately, the other one, the Battersea Power Station. Another great area. I love Battersea. I mean, I'm sort of going there again next week to go and have another look around. Another building, derelict for many, many years. Couldn't be knocked down because there's listing. So they've now actually, I think the Malaysian government, it was a Malaysian investor, has spent hundreds of millions in developing Battersea into what it is, which is phenomenal.
It's a great looking building.
And also you've got all it's become the embassy court, all the embassies are there after the American embassy moved from the Grosvenor Square over.
But you wouldn't get local butchers in there though, would you?
But would you or wouldn't you? I mean, there's still some of the old pubs are still there, which you wouldn't have gone previously when it's derelict. Now they're all sort of gastro pubs. There are little high streets. Why can't there be a modern little high street within the complex of all the apartments?
That's an interesting concept. I mean, that I hadn't really thought about it, but actually, just as you were talking, it does, like that civic feel, the getting people out, and actually not losing everything to sort of like a pre-manufactured flavour could be an interesting. You've got the job. You've got the job.
Thank
as
you. Thank you very much. Again, it might take more than a year though. That's the only problem. And there's there's also the process of change. Sometimes you can't force the process of change. It's something that's just got to happen over time. There's some good ideas there. Let's just leave them there and just see how they get picked up.
Jason, I think it's been a nice little walk through London and discussing some of the issues that we're all dealing with, and seeing it from a different perspective is always interesting. Thanks for your time, and look forward to catching up again soon.
My pleasure. Thank you very much.